The Final Fantasy VII Remake made an impact that can be considered somewhat divisive. This is especially true of the ending itself. By the time the game was over, some saw it as a massive triumph for the series, while others saw it as a departure from the game it was supposed to represent, and an unnecessary one at that. In my case, I personally had some feelings when I first reached the ending, but I've had a lot of time to think and reflect, and I believe I might have come a little closer to figuring out the intent behind it. Before I get into that though, I want to talk about the original game a little. Final Fantasy VII stands out among other titles in the series, and even RPGs as a whole, for having one of the most impactful, shocking, and influential twists in a video game. So much so that future entries in the series would even attempt to replicate this same impact. You probably already know exactly what I'm referring to. It affected fans so deeply that some are even to this day desperate for the chance to have things go differently. The chance to make it right. The chance to save her. The death of Aerith is one of the most notorious scenes ever, and with the reveal that the remake could be diverging from the original game, the big question on a lot of people's minds is, will she survive this time around? It's a valid thing to ponder, given that when fans first had their hearts broken by the tragic revelation back in the before times of 1997, they actually wrote into Square at the time basically begging for her to be revived. The future direction of Remake is the perfect opportunity to do things differently now that the chance is there, and that is exactly why I don't believe it's going to happen. I think that while Remake intends to provide new concepts and perspectives, it doesn't aim to remove anything from the source material. Something that struck me upon realizing that Remake was taking a different route while attempting to adhere to the original game was the question of why? What purpose does this subversion serve, and is it a beneficial one? I was concerned that this was indeed subversion for subversion's sake. Looking at the game as a whole, however, I might have been looking at it from the wrong angle. If the intent is to provide an even deeper look into the world of Final Fantasy VII, should anything that could restrict that angle be seen as sacred and untouchable? Especially given that the game not only includes, but also fleshes out so much from the original. While the context of certain scenes is distinctly different, and there are several deviations, I actually struggle to think of anything Remake missed in regards to the story of the original. And it's important to note that those deviations resulted in a greater scope of the game's story and setting. Nothing is being sacrificed in order to grant the player further insight. Scenes aren't being replaced or removed, instead they're built upon with entirely new scenes for further context. In the same way that Final Fantasy VII redefined what it meant to be an RPG, this game effectively redefines what it means to be a remake in an age saturated with one-to-one recreations and remasters. And don't misunderstand, the remake is very much a solid reimagining of the original game for new audiences, one that puts an even greater emphasis upon the setting and characters. Supposedly, interviews have confirmed that the remainder of Remake's story will still closely resemble that of the original, which is completely feasible if a similar blueprint is followed throughout. Though it's become fairly clear that the word remake is a subtitle and not a definition, I don't think Remake is disregarding the direction of the original game at all. Rather, I believe it seeks to build upon it in a number of new ways, some of which might not be possible without first opening the door for entirely new perspectives. It's a combination of remake and expansion. An expansion of the lore, of the setting, and even of the scope. Rather than being a direct graphical upgrade, it's an endeavour to explore more of Final Fantasy VII, more of what we recognise, which naturally leads into brand new elements. Going forward, I imagine the future parts will play into that effect of knowing something is coming, and toy with the idea of what returning players might do differently. How we might choose to spend our time with someone we know will be gone soon, and the lengths we might go to in order to prevent something that is simply meant to happen. Sometimes, subversion is a good thing, when it's built around an idea that requires that subversion or otherwise benefits from it. Now the question becomes, will the VII Remake actually put its subversive plot to good use in future parts? Dude, I don't know, I can't account for Nomura. I thought Kingdom Hearts 3 was going to be a good game. The original Final Fantasy VII was a game that was remembered for its subversions. Subversions that paid service to the story itself and tied into its own themes beautifully. There weren't hollow attempts to pull the rug out from the player, or handled in a haphazard manner that derailed the story entirely. Whether the same will be said for the Final Fantasy VII Remake or not is something that only time will tell, but so far, I'm on board to see what the future might have in store. So maybe don't make it a bunch of pointless bullshit. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe or just let me know your thoughts in the comments. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you'd like to support my channel, you can either subscribe to my Patreon or donate directly via PayPal. Links can be found in the description below. Have a great day. I'll catch you next time.